great. Corey, thank you so much for having me out here to your club. Just really appreciate you and just getting to talk with you over the phone as well. I did bring both my books, as you mentioned. The second one, which I recently published, Tips for Academic Success in College, great graduation gift for any high school graduates. And then also, What God Did with a Mess Like Me. I brought a copy of that, and as you can see from the cover, this is not photoshopped. That is an actual photo. It's symbolic for me.
Okay.
Actually, it's not just mud, but it's mud mixed with cow moo, because there's a better representation, I feel, of this mess that I covered my life in. But as you can see, the water just coming down washing me is symbolic of just when I came to Christ, how He just washed me of all that. And I'll kind of go into some of this book this evening. But just really to set the stage, this afternoon I printed off an email that my mother sent me not long after I graduated with my doctorate degree. And in it she said, "I don't think I told you when you were in junior high, after I would drop you off at school, I would go home and lay across my bed with my Bible open and begin to pray for you. I did that several times a week. I don't know if you ever realized how painful it was for me as a parent to see you struggle academically. I know I was not the perfect parent I needed to be to you at times, and I'm truly sorry, but you were always in my heart, and I was constantly praying for you. I didn't know what else to do at times but pray. I really loved you and felt very guilty for not being the mature mom you needed. I remember when we lived in Southlake, as I continued to pray for you, one day I sat on the floor at the foot of my bed and was praying for you. I sat there very frustrated with the Lord and just couldn't figure out why God was not answering my prayers. I felt God encouraging me to start praising Him for what He was going to do in your life, so I did at that point, and that's when I really saw God start to move in your life. I think that was in 1998. 1998 was the year that I moved off down to Houston and began to attend Houston Baptist University, and the year that I really began to see God start to move and work in my life and mature me as a Christian. And thank God for praying parents, because even when you don't know what to do or what to say, when you continue to go before God humbly and sincerely in His own time and in His own way, He'll hear your prayers and He'll answer them. I'm also thankful for all the friends that rallied behind my parents and just encouraged them too. And we all need friends that will encourage us and pray with us and be there for us, just to talk sometimes. I know that with this Sunday school face, I give off the impression that I have it all together, but that's far from the truth. And appearances can often be deceiving and misleading, and I don't want to leave you with a false impression of who I am. I was fortunate to have Christian parents, as I've already shared, and when I was a small child, we moved to Texas and to Fort Worth so that my father could attend seminary. Shortly after we moved, however, I was molested by a neighbor, and unfortunately, that's one of my earliest memories. And I'm sure my parents had some tough conversations with God that probably went something like, "God, why did you allow this to happen to our boy? Why does our family have to go through this? Why do we have to suffer like this? We're here trying to serve you, and you allowed this to happen." And we may not always completely understand why God allows certain things into our life, but what I've come to realize over the years is that God can use everything for His glory. Some of the things I'll share with you may be a little surprising to you. And I don't claim to be perfect at all. I'm far from it. And some of you may even know much more about the Bible than I do. But as I'm sit here this evening, I'm reminded just of the story of the man in John chapter 9 who was born blind and a beggar on the streets. And one day he had an encounter with Jesus, and Jesus gave him sight. And after people in the community found out about this, and Pharisees found out about this, they began to harass him and just ask him, how is it that you can see? We know you were blind, but now you can see. And he tried to tell them and explain to them, but they continued to harass him, not really accepting his answer. And finally he said, "Look, all I know is that I once was blind, but Jesus touched me and now I can see." And so I'll never fully understand Jesus, but what I do know is that He's touched my life, and that's something I can share with you with confidence this evening. Growing up, I was a rebellious preacher's kid. I've tried to psychoanalyze myself and figure out why it is that I, was so rebellious and made my own decisions, but never really know. I think some of it might have just been for shock value. I didn't want to be the goody-goody kid and everything, and people knew I was a preacher's kid. But needless to say, I made some pretty bad decisions. And as I got older, those decisions and the consequences became much more severe. When I was a freshman in high school, I began to abuse alcohol, even began to try some drugs. My sophomore year, I began dating girls that my parents didn't approve of, and I became sexually active. I can't tell you how much that decision has impacted my life still to this day. Going in my junior year, continued to make bad decisions, and I was doing horribly in school. I was making terrible grades. I'd never made good grades. I'd always been a C student at best. In elementary, I had to have special help to read. I had to leave the classroom, go with an assistant to get help to read. When the teacher would be calling on students in class to read, even in junior high and high school, I'd just be so nervous, just hoping that the teacher wouldn't call on me, because it was so embarrassing and humiliating to hear my friends snicker as I would struggle through different sentences. So I continued to struggle through school and making bad decisions. And in the spring of my junior year, at only 17 years of age, I discovered that a girl I was dating had become pregnant. And we were both very immature and both very scared. And my father, being the pastor in the community, I felt that if people in the community found out that the pastor's son had gotten his girlfriend pregnant, that my dad might be asked to step down. Or even if he wasn't, that maybe he'd just be too ashamed even to go on in the ministry. So after several months of just agonizing over what to do, we secretly decided upon an abortion and waited till the summer to carry that through. And I think about that decision still to this day, 20 years later, almost every day of my life. Going into my senior year, what should have been one of the best years of my life ended up being one of the worst years of my life. I was starting both ways on South Lake Carroll's football team. We just won 2 back-to-back state championships. But partway through the season, I made some bad decisions at a party one night. I ended up spending a night and day in jail, and called into the coach's office that next week and was told that I was no longer allowed on the football team. And I became very devastated and depressed. My dad and his brothers had played football in college, and up until that point, my entire life had just revolved around football, and I worked my whole life just to play for my senior year, and thought that perhaps maybe I'd play at some small college when I graduated from high school. But now that dream seemed completely over. I thought no coach or team would want me to play on their football team. So I began to spiral in an out of control depression. And my girlfriend had broken up with me. She didn't want to be with me anymore, and I really can't say that I blame her. My life had really just become a mess. And I began to drink before school. I would go out to my car at lunch and drink because I was just so ashamed of the person I'd become. I couldn't even look people in the eyes, at school. And with a month left in high school, I was called into the assistant principal's office. I was called out of in-school suspension. When I got to his office, my parents were sitting in front of his desk, and he asked me to sit down behind his desk, and he said, "John, you're out of control. You can no longer stay here at Carroll, but if you'll go to rehab, we'll allow you to walk with the rest of your class." So I agreed to those terms and went to rehab. And after rehab, it was a good place for me. It got me out of the situation, a dangerous place in my life at that point. And so after rehab, I had an aunt and uncle that lived out of town, and they invited me to go live with them. So I thought this was a great opportunity to kind of get a fresh start. And so, but not really ready to change my life. And so I moved out of town with them. But it wasn't long till I found some more people that weren't really living their life for the Lord and still making just immature decisions. And so those people I was hanging around decided to enroll at a local community college there in town. With no plans for my life, I decided that I would go along with them and enroll with them. And I enrolled in 15 hours that fall semester in '95. And the only 2 classes I passed, enrolled 15 hours, that's 5 courses. The only 2 classes that I passed were art appreciation and racquetball. And the only reason I passed art appreciation was because I convinced the instructor that landscaping was art, and I went and raked her leaves and she gave me a C. But I want to assure you that will not work at DBU. After that semester, my dad said, if you're not going to take school serious, you need to move back home. So I moved back home and really fell back in with the same old crowd I'd been running around with and continued to make poor decisions. And I just become so ashamed of the person that I was. I didn't want to live anymore. And this continued for about another 9 months, and there were nights that I held a gun to my head, but I just couldn't pull the trigger because I didn't want to do that to my family. But really, at that point, I just wish that I'd never been born. And then there were nights that, I just prayed that God just wouldn't allow me to wake up in the morning. But then there was one night I just asked God, I said, God, my life is such a mess. Just please give me another chance at life. But at that point, I wasn't ready to quit doing some of the things I was doing. I wasn't ready to stop dating the girl I was dating. I wasn't ready to leave the friends I was hanging around. But I began to feel a stronger conscience of the things I was doing. And that carried on for a few more months. And I remember New Year's Eve, 96, 97. I was out ready just to party. And really, I took one drink and I just said to myself, this isn't how I want to live anymore. And, so I struggled for about another 2 weeks. Just struggled with the decision of what to do with my life. My dad had always said, you need to just to give Jesus a chance, give your life to Jesus. And I said, Dad, I've tried that, doesn't work. But really, I never had given 100% of my life. I had one foot, in both sides. Just wanted to do my thing, but hoping God would always get me out of a mess. That kind of living a double life. I'd do what I wanted to do Friday and Saturday night, but Sunday morning I would show up even if I was still drunk, from the night before sometimes. So that went on for another 2 weeks, and I had a friend that I met at church when we were in high school, and he was a great Christian guy. And I think the only reason he hung out with me is because we both had a strong interest in fishing. We'd often go fishing together. And this one Saturday night, we were going fishing together, and at this time, coincidentally, he was a student at Dallas Baptist University. And so I pulled my truck over, and I told Aaron, just what I'd been struggling with, the decision I'd been struggling to make. And so Aaron said, hey, just let me pray for you. And so Aaron prayed for me right there, and he said, John, tomorrow's Sunday morning. And so at the end of the service, they're going to give an invitation. So at that invitation, if you want to go and give your life to the Lord, I'll be happy to walk down the aisle with you and be beside you. So I said, Aaron, I think that's what I want to do. And so that next Sunday morning, at the invitation of the service that my father had preached, when he gave the invitation, I stepped down the aisle with Aaron by my side, and I walked down, threw my arms around my father, and I just told him how sorry I was for the life I'd lived. Just for being an embarrassment to our family. I told him I loved him. And, with tears in his eyes back, he said, John, I love you. When you were born, we dedicated your life to the Lord. And that was just one of the best things in my life. At that point, I felt so much relief. I felt like I'd been at the bottom of a dog pile, and I just couldn't breathe. I just was just so heavy with so many burdens. And I just felt like somebody had come in, just started pulling people off me. You could finally just inhale and exhale and just finally breathe. And I knew at that point that it was that Jesus had just come in and just started pulling all the layers of just the sin and the guilt and just the shame that I just spent years just covering my life with. And I knew at that point that I was going to have to make some major decisions that I didn't want this to be like before, where I say I'm going to live my life for the Lord, but I do my own thing, and I knew I was going to have to quit hanging out with the friends I was hanging out with. I knew I was going to have to leave the girlfriend that I was currently dating. She wasn't ready to make the same decision I was, and it's not a decision I can make for her, but it was a decision I had to make for myself. So it was really lonely for a while, because I really didn't have a whole lot of friends that I could hang out with. And all the Christians that I knew my age, I thought were nerds, but I was wrong, So I began to pray and ask God. I said, God, just please, just surround me with some good Christian friends that will just encourage me and lift me up, and help me live this Christian life. And God, please just give me some confidence, because at that point I just still couldn't look people in the eyes. I was just still ashamed of my life. And so I just continued to pray toward those things, and over time God just began to restore my confidence. God began to surround me with good Christian friends that would encourage me and help me to walk a strong Christian walk, never perfect, still very immature in my walk, but God began to mature me, and God's still maturing me, still not perfect this day. I still make plenty of mistakes. But another year went by, and I thought, this is great. All these great opportunities are going to come my way. I'm going to make great grades in school. I'm going to have a great job. Well, another year went by, and none of that really happened. I realized that God wants me to work hard, and God's going to bless my hard work. So I began to change some of my habits. I began to spend more time studying. And at that point, as I shared, I wasn't a good reader, and I knew I needed to read Scripture and understand what the Bible said. So I asked God, please help me read. Help me to understand what I'm reading, because I could read a paragraph, and halfway through I'd be daydreaming, and wouldn't even understand what I just read. And I had timed myself, and at that point it'd take me 10 minutes to read a page. So I began to ask God, help me to comprehend what I'm reading, help me to read faster. And so I pulled myself off of the schedule at work and just spent time just reading during the day, and just really focusing my life and trying to understand what it meant to be a Christian and to follow Jesus Christ. And so I love to fish, as I said. I would pack a bag every day with some snacks, some Christian books, and a Bible, and take my fishing rod down to a pond, and I just alternate between fishing and reading. In a little over 3.5 months, I read the entire New Testament of the Bible and almost a dozen books, and God really began to bless me. So that summer, I decided to get back in school. I enrolled in 3 courses. I made 2 B's and a C. I thought, wow, this is the great, best grades I've ever made in college. So my dad took me down to visit Houston Baptist University, and really at that point I had no plans for my life, so I thought, my dad's not going to steer me wrong. I'll just enroll down here. And they were on the quarter system at that time. In my first quarter, I made a D- GPA, and I thought, this is it for me. School's just not for me. I need to move back home and just find a job. But my dad encouraged me, however, to stay down there and continue working hard. And so I went back down and tried to refocus and say, socializing isn't why I'm here in college. I need to focus on earning a degree. So I began to cut out a lot of the social activities and began to refocus. And many nights I would try to go to an empty classroom late at night and, just open up my Bible first and begin to read some Scripture, because it helped me focus and remember why I'm at school. And I just remember thinking, if I can maintain a C average, a 2.0, that I can graduate from college, and then maybe one day God will use it as a platform to bring Him glory. So I continued to work hard. That second quarter, I made a C+ GPA. Thought, wow, this is great. Continued to work hard and stay focused. And the third and final quarter of my first year down in Houston, I made a 4.0, which was all A's. I remember on my way back home at the end of that semester, I called my dad halfway between Houston and Dallas and told him that I made a 4.0, but I don't think that he believed me until I actually got home, and showed him that grade report. And God just really began to bless my life as I just sought out to follow Him, and God began to mature me as a believer, as a Christian. God began to bless me with things that I don't deserve, but just in His goodness, He blessed me with them. I want to share some of the things that He blessed me with, not so that you can say what a good person Jon Lineberger is, because if you leave here this evening thinking that, you've missed the whole point. Because I've made a complete mess of my life when I tried to live it on my own. But when I gave my life to Jesus Christ, God just really just restored my life and renewed my life. And by the time I graduated from Houston Baptist University, I was named to the list of who's who among American colleges and universities, the National Dean's List. I was the National Collegiate Social Sciences Awards winner, a National Collegiate Education Awards winner. I was inducted into the Psychology National Honor Society, the Sociology International Honor Society. I was a treasurer of Brothers Under Christ. I was a student senate chaplain. I was chairman of Husky Leadership Conference. And I missed 2 homecoming games in high school for poor decisions that I had made. And I was voted homecoming king my senior year down at HBU. And just as a testimony that you become like the people that you put yourself around. My second year at HBU, I knew I needed to continue to surround myself with good people that had good habits that would rub off on me. And I found a guy named Ross Shelton. The only B I ever knew him to make was the semester that he broke up with his girlfriend. But he and I got together and became roommates, and his study habits really were a good influence on me. And so we became very good friends and are still close friends to this day. And when Ross and I both graduated, we both received the President's Award and had our name placed in the Walk of Honor on tiles side by side. And God's continued to bless me. I've been named to the Dallas Business Journal's list of 40 under 40, the Collin County Business Press list of 21 leaders for the 21st century, and the year that Frisco was named the fastest growing city in America according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the Frisco Chamber named me Citizen of the Year. And I hope that you don't think I'm being arrogant by sharing this with you, but I just want you to know what God can do with the life of somebody who at one time was just hopeless, somebody who felt dumb, felt stupid, somebody who didn't even want to live. And I hope you don't think that I'm trying to make God out to be some scientific formula for success or for His name to be used in some kind of incantation to get you what you want. But what I found is that God is a relationship that offers hope for change in our lives. And for years I thought if I could just change the people around me that I'd be happy. You know, I talked down to people. I tried to intimidate them. I talked down to my family. I tried to intimidate my family members, and that never worked. All it did was create walls of resentment. But I can tell you that God has torn down those walls today, and that He's restored those relationships. And I'm closer to my family today than I ever have been. And God can renew what it seems like and restore what it seems like the devil has taken away from your life. You know, and I thought that I dug such a deep hole for my life that I'd never be able to get out of it. And it's true, I wouldn't have been able to get out of it on my own, but Jesus Christ reached down and He was able to pull me out of that hole that I dug for myself. You know, I thought I never deserved to get married or to have children, but God's blessed me with a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful children. And it's true, I don't deserve any of that. But God's grace, because of God's grace, deserving has nothing to do with it. And so tonight, I mean, some of you may be thinking, probably not in a Rotary Club, because a lot of y'all are great people, but I'm not naive enough to think that just because you're a Rotarian that you haven't gone through or maybe have done some of the things that I've done. And maybe you wonder if God can restore that and God can renew your life. And I just want to encourage you that He can. And it doesn't matter how young you are. You think that maybe God can't use you because you're too young. Well, He used a boy named David, who many scholars believe was only 13 years of age, to defeat a giant Philistine named Goliath, and save his country from being enslaved. And maybe you think, maybe I'm too old right now for God really to do anything in my life. I've wasted way too many years. Well, I just want to remind you that Moses was in his 80s when God called him and said, I want to use you to bring God's people out of Egypt. So I hope that my story is an encouragement to you. I know that many people could probably just replace the name Jon Lineberger. You could replace the name of this book and just insert your own name. So I hope that this is an encouragement to you not to give up in life, but that with Jesus Christ, you can renew your life and achieve great things. So, Corey, thank you again for having me out this evening.
You bet. Questions? Any questions? I have. Well, I'll start while you guys are warming up. The subtitle for the book is 17 Truths to a Changed Life. And I was wondering what some of those truths are that we would find in the book.
Well, great answer. Some of those, may be common sense, but it's just good to have reminders. Okay. One of those truths, is just to make sure, are you hanging around the right type of people that you need to be hanging around? Okay. So be sure to hang around good people who will encourage you, just like my example of Ross Shelton, because you will become like the people you put yourself around. You know, I kind of put some of them in sequential order. So the first one would be, hey, you must be willing to change. So it goes beyond just the I want to change. You've got to be willing to change. A lot of people want to change, but you got to be willing to change. And then two, just make a commitment to live your life for Jesus Christ. So now I'm going to make a commitment, you know. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. Man, I'm still not perfect. If my wife were here, she would tell you that. You know, I still make plenty of mistakes. But the great thing about Jesus Christ is that He still loves us, and He'll still use us in spite of our mistakes. So just make a commitment, you know, to live your life for Jesus Christ. And some of them, you know, hey, don't stay stuck dwelling in the past. It's okay to think about the past occasionally, just to remind yourself of how far the Lord has brought you. But if we stay stuck in the past, we'll get stuck in the negative, you know. We'll think, well, God can't use us. We made so many mistakes, and really it'll paralyze you from doing anything great. You think that, you know, because of what you've done in the past. And then so, you know, like I said, we're going to continue to make mistakes, but when you fall forward. Because when you fall forward, you're going to be on your knees and you can get up, you know. You can be on your knees and ask God for forgiveness. And then another one is just to set goals. And along with setting goals, the next step in setting goals is to write them down. Because I've found in my own life, writing down a dream, really it doesn't become a goal. It's still a dream until you write it down. But writing down a goal has, for my life, been an effective next step in achieving those.
Okay.
How did you get into Rotary?
Well, the president of Dallas Baptist University asked me to join Rotary Club in
Is he a
Frisco, Dr.
member?
Gary Cook.
Dr. Cook.
He has been a member of Rotary down in Waco. He was also pro tem mayor of Waco at one time.
Oh, okay. Now, you're not in the club that meets, so there used to be a club that met at DBU, the morning club.
I'm not in that club.
Okay, you're Nicole? Is
Oh, Nicole Crossa.
Yeah, she's in your
Yes.
club.
She
Okay.
followed me as president. She was my president-elect.
Oh,
yes.
okay, because she was president when I was governor.
That's right.
Which club?
Frisco. No.
Frisco Noon.
Frisco Noon.
Yeah. John
Yeah.
Mosier.
Mm-hmm. John's a great guy.
Greg? Greg?
Well,
Oh,
I
I'm sorry,
was
Dan.
kind of reminded the old cliche about the Lord won't give you more than you can handle.
Mm.
And my response sometimes has been, I believe that, but do you have to see how close you can cut it? And sometimes I think he's cut it pretty close.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sounds like you had it cut pretty close a time or two.
Yeah. Well, you know, if we're God won't give us more things than He can handle. If we try to handle them on our own, there ain't no way I could have handled some of that stuff. You know, there's no way that I could have climbed out of that or recovered from my life. You know, at that point, I thought nobody is going to hire me. I've got no future, you know, in any type of career. You know, when we submit our life to Jesus Christ, He can use us no matter what we've done in our past. Matter of fact, He'll use our past to give us a future.